about to listen to the Dr. Dahlia Show. Sassy, stimulating medical talk radio. Any medical advice Dr. Dahlia Wax gives on her show should not be substituted for an actual visit to your medical provider. And now, here's Dr. Dahlia.
And we're back on the Dr. Dahlia Show, 1-877-DOC-DALI, 1-877-DOC-DALI. So many of us are still in shock over what happened at the White House Correspondence Dinner. Third attempt on President Trump's life. And I think early reports from the media were like, oh, I think they were just going after the press. No, he was going after Trump. There's a manifesto. It was obvious. 3 attempts on the president's life. How does this keep happening? And when I heard that it happened at the White House Correspondence Dinner, the Washington Hilton, I was like, isn't that the same place back in 81 where Ronald Reagan was shot? Same hotel. I mean, God bless the Secret Service. God bless law enforcement, for protecting everybody there, and there not being any loss of life. This could have been horrible. In fact, Cole Thomas Allen, the suspect, 31 years old, who's going to be arraigned today for committing this and allegedly also shooting a Secret Service agent. I mean, he could have had a suicide vest. He could have had, bombs on him. There could have been so many other things he could have done when he breached security that thank God he didn't. And thank God Secret Service and law enforcement jumped on this as quickly as possible. But now that, we have this manifesto and, all eyes are on where were the signs? And we're going to speak a little bit more about who Cole Thomas Allen was. But, I'm looking at the rhetoric. I'm looking at people on social media. And they're laughing. They're happy about this. I'm like, are you kidding me? A third attempt on the president's life. What's wrong with these people? And, I had early on when I heard that this happened, at the Washington Hilton, I was like, see, this is why we need a ballroom on the White House property. This way it's easier to vet. It's easier to ensure that nobody, checked in the day before. It's easier to sweep, make quote unquote sterile, which is the verbiage they use. So this is why they need to do a ballroom. And so I posted that early on. This is kind of why we have to be really careful, especially, now that we have such a sick population of individuals who just, want to be famous for, taking down a public official. And of course, people balked at that going, oh, no. They really hate the ballroom ideas. Like anything Trump wants to do, cure cancer, whatever. They just hate. They're finding fault with it. They just hate him so much. And you're like, look, this isn't about somebody trying to shoot Trump or somebody trying to hurt Trump. This person didn't care if liberals or Democrats were killed as well. I mean, he was attacking the White House Correspondence Dinner. There were probably more, number for number, non-Republicans and Republicans in the room. And I look at how everybody's thinking, and I keep bringing this up, when we talk about hate and racism and anti-Semitism and homophobia, where people are like, well, they're only discriminated against these guys, so I'm good, I'm safe. Well, they're only trying to assassinate Trump, so we're good. Are you? The same type of individual who is, anti-American and anti-public official, whether they're Republican or not, can also have the same hate for somebody in the Democratic Party as well. What if the Democratic candidate or the Democratic president isn't as liberal as they want to be? Remember, these are individuals with mental illness. Now, I don't want to read the manifesto that Cole Thomas Allen wrote, but obviously this guy was sick in the head. And we have individuals just, planning and plotting. And it's not just going to be a Republican president. It's going to be a Democrat president. It's going to be, this is why I like the ballroom. This isn't, so Trump has a ballroom. It's so that there's a easier place to vet, easier place to secure, easier place to quote unquote, sterilize from a security standpoint. It just makes more sense. But when you have to take out a hotel and you have to take out, an area, every time we hear of these, these assassination attempts, they're not necessarily within the White House. They're outside. It's when they get the president out. And I don't think the president needs to be locked up, for 4 years in the White House. But I mean, look at how many people could have gotten hurt. This was really dangerous. And the rhetoric just keeps going, going, going. You hear people joking about, oh, he should have done it this way. Or, I mean, look at what happened with the Butler, Pennsylvania shooter. I mean, actual public officials joking about how he missed. That's disgusting. And if you think the opposite party is immune, it's not. Because the individuals who are going after Republicans with this sort of thinking many times are a part of that party. And they're not going to use logic and go, well, you know what? This person is trying and he's maybe not as progressive, or he's not as this, or I think whatever irrational thinking they have is what they're going to justify disgusting behavior. This White House Correspondence dinner is going to happen again. From what I understand, Trump was very vocal about wanting to go back. Like when he was shot in Butler, Pennsylvania, he's like, fight, fight, fight. He wanted to show everybody that, no, you're not going to win. You're not going to disrupt an event. You're going to let me speak. You're going to let us enjoy the evening. This is America, for crying out loud. And I don't blame him for wanting to go back, but I agree with Secret Service that per protocol, you can't sweep the building. You have a Secret Service agent shot. You have individuals scared. Erica Kirk obviously was there, and she was, traumatized by what was going on. I mean, you're seeing people on the ground and under tables, although there was somebody who was eating dinner. I posted a video where there was somebody that just continued to eat while all the chaos was going on. They just continued to eat. I noticed that. And then you saw some people grabbing bottles of wine. I'm kind of confused about that one, but really, you don't have access to wine, but you got to steal it from, loot. You're going to actually loot at the Correspondence dinner after there is a shooting. Well done, law enforcement, for again stepping up and being there and putting your lives on the line to protect others. But there's going to be a lot of questions as to how this guy got through and how this happened now 3 times. 1-877-Doc-Dolly, don't go away.
This is an urgent announcement for anyone that's $10,000 or more in debt. Before you make another minimum payment, you need to know there are special programs that can completely free you of your debt. Total Financial Freedom can help you become debt-free in months instead of years. Resolve your credit card debt, signature loans, department store cards, internet loans, and timeshares. Call Total Financial Freedom now at 800-878-6020 for a free consultation. For 16 years, Total Financial Freedom has helped thousands get out of debt. You can feel confident when calling because Total Financial Freedom is A+ rated by the Better Business Bureau. Battling for years and years stuck in the endless cycle of minimum payments could take decades. You have the right to get your debt resolved and substantially reduce your monthly payments. Call Total Financial Freedom now at 800-878-6020. That's 800-878-6020. 800-878-6020.
Let's face it, guys. We're living in times where the truth is becoming more suppressed and censorship is increasing at an alarming rate, especially on social media platforms. It's Clyde, and I want to tell you about a safe and secure digital playground we put together just for you. It's Aftermath.media. You get access to thousands of Ground Zero archives and podcasts, along with our private social media groups with your basic membership starting at only $7 a month. Each subscription includes tech support, access to the RSS feeds, along with our own chat room and Telegram channel. In addition, the premium membership includes research study groups, webinars, a document and movie library, a live video stream of Ground Zero, a monthly Zoom chat with me, and other bonus content. Be sure to check out our yearly specials as well. Sign up today while you're thinking about it. Sign up at Aftermath.media. Again, that's Aftermath.media.
right, we are back at the Dr. Dolly Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877 Dr. Dolly, 1-877 DOCDALI. Big thanks to Talk Media Network for making the show happen. Big thanks to Daniel, our producer. And big thanks to y'all for tuning in. We really do appreciate it. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter, X at Dr. Dahlia, Facebook, The Dr. Dahlia Show, and on YouTube, click like and subscribe. So for those of us who really love the show Friends, you know, we all had our favorite characters. Mine was Joey. You know, a lot of people loved Rachel. Some people loved Chandler. A lot of people loved Phoebe. But interestingly, Lisa Kudrow felt that her character was an afterthought and she was an outcast and she wasn't considered one of the main. And she didn't feel like her growth on the show was on par with everybody else's. And in fact, though, I thought she won the first of the Emmys back in '98. I don't really remember, but I thought she was pretty significant. But interestingly, she felt she wasn't. She still had a post-movie career, you know, from Friends, as they all did. But it's interesting because, you know, I hear people talk about, you know, Friends and all that. And I even remember when Friends was on back in the '90s, they felt bad for Phoebe because she didn't seem to have as many funny lines. She had storylines, but people were just so enamored with the Ross and Rachel and all that when the show took a turn, she felt like she wasn't, you know, as significant, which, you know, if I could, you know, extrapolate that and relate it to regular, you know, everyday life. I hear that all the time from people in the hospital setting. You know, the nurses feel like the doctor gets all the credit. The doctor, you know, walks in for 2 seconds, gets all this credit, and they're the ones that are doing the hard work. And they're, you know, and they're not wrong about that. I mean, the nurses are the you know, nuts and bolts of what we do and the backbone of our healthcare system. And even with Friends groups, I always see that, where you have somebody who just stands out and seems to be the center of attention and all that, but that Friends group is put together and kept like glue with some of the more non-vocal people. If you saw like Abbott and Costello, there was the funny man and then there was the straight, you know, the straight man. And so I've always known in life that there's a combination. Whether you have a partnership in work, whether you have a partnership in medicine, where you don't always have to have that personality or the looks and, you know, when you see that Lisa Kudrow felt that way with Friends, you know, I was wondering how that happened, you know, and I've said this before, Courtney Cox was probably one of the larger of the stars of the 6 of them before they got cast. And she's exquisite. And Courtney Cox was supposed to be Rachel. And she read the script and she's like, I'd rather be Monica. And you know, I knew early on that Jennifer Aniston was cute, but she wasn't as exquisite as Courtney Cox, but the way they made her character and the way then people fell in love with her. And then I started to feel bad for Courtney Cox because later she started to become the shrill wife, controlling, and they, you know, and so they morphed everybody's characters a little bit, you know, and they made Joey more dumb and they made, you know, and then they played around with that. Yet Phoebe was pretty constant, and I liked that about her. I thought Phoebe, with her quirkiness and her more hippie style, was a really nice contrast. And it allowed there to be that, and I knew that had to have been hard, you know, when she was pregnant, and, you know, here she's next to 2 size zeros, and I knew that had to be difficult, but I really wish she understood how much her role kept everything together. So looking at real life, how many of you feel like you're the outcast, where you're not really a part of the group, or you're not really a part of the bigger picture? And I want you to get it out of your head that you're not important, because, in fact, a lot of the behind the scenes are the ones that really make things work. Whenever you watch movies, you might watch Brad Pitt in F1, but I understand that the people behind Brad Pitt and the people making the F1 and making these movies, you know, or Wicked or whatever, these are the ones that really deserve the credit. They don't get the credit. Their name is small when you're watching the on the movies, when you're watching all the credits, there's just very little bitty, that you can barely even read, who they were. But, I Friends is one of my favorite shows, and I love it. And seeing it evolve in over 10 years, because it went from 1994 to 2004. I didn't get to watch the shows live because I was working, so I always watch reruns. So I've seen every episode probably 8 times because I've always seen the reruns. And yes, Phoebe didn't have the same attraction as, Joey and Monica and Rachel and all that. But she was still funny. And she still had a lot of great lines. And she was imperative. If she wasn't a part of that show, it might not have done as well. And so your ancillary characters, that's why you always have supporting actors, and, the Oscars, they'll honor the supporting actors. And you're like, well, the supporting actors must really, hate it that they weren't the main actor and they weren't the main, but if you've ever been a backup singer, if you've ever been a supporting actor or actress, your role is important, and they need to be honored. How many times do the Grammys honor the backup singers? You, in order for you to do what you need to do. I mean, I always sing a cappella because I can't afford backup singers. But if I had backup singers, I would sound good because they would keep me on key, right? So, we have friend groups, and I've felt this way too, where with certain friend groups, you're the one that's, not the pretty one, or not the popular one, or not getting all the dates. And, oftentimes I was always the wingman. I need you to stand next to me so I look good. And so the guy will come up to me and I'm like, well, what am I supposed to do? Yeah, well, maybe he'll have a friend. And I'm standing there going, I don't want to be the unpretty one next to the pretty one. I don't want that. But you also don't want to be the one who's the best looking or the whatever. I don't know if you've ever, in real estate, heard the terminology, you never want to be the most expensive house on the block. You just don't, because your comps won't go up, but you want to be the house that isn't as expensive, isn't as fancy as the most expensive one on the block, and then your prices go up. And so that's always been my strategy. I don't want to always hang out with the superstar, and I don't always want to, but I don't have to be the superstar. I don't have to be, if I'm not that person, there's other roles for me. If other people don't appreciate it, to hell with them. I mean, I'm telling Lisa Kudrow, we appreciated you. I think the Phoebe role on Friends was very integral. So don't feel bad about that. And just like Chandler and Joey, you had a really good chemistry there. They both were funny. But was Chandler, I'm sure Matt Perry felt like, why can't I be the good looking one? And even his role was the guy that couldn't get girls. He ends up getting, the Courtney Cox character, Monica, which ended up originally being the most beautiful of the characters. But still, I'm sure he felt that way. Yeah, but Joey's a good-looking guy. Joey's a good-looking guy. Yet Joey, in fact, Matt LeBlanc ended up having the least successful post career than all of them. But he was my favorite. I just love Joey, especially since I agreed with his eating and his meatball subs. So don't let anybody or anything or any group make you feel like you're the outcast. I went to 12 schools, and with every friend group, I was never the popular one. I was never the one that led. There was always somebody else, and I didn't mind it. Now, when I work with the team, when I work with students, yes, I'm like, God, this is how I think we need to do it. This is how I think we should do it. You can follow me on this or not. But when it comes to in terms of friends or relationships, same thing with my husband. I don't want to be the one that runs the marriage. I don't want to be that, especially if it goes downhill. I want to either partner with him or let him be, the man of the relationship. It's just something I've always favored. I know it doesn't look like I'd take a back seat, but I have no problem taking that back seat because that back seat is important. I forget what it is with your, like when you steer, like the bobsled, right? Sometimes that person who anchors, in fact, when I used to run track, with relay, my favorite was the anchor. For me, that's how I find, I'm happier with that. So, for those of you that love Friends as much as I do, throw Lisa Kudrow some love. I understand she was Phoebe, wasn't the whole Monica and Rachel thing, but still, throw her some love. And for, if you do have other people in your life or family members who just feel like they're forgotten or they're the less, if you have kids, There's always kids where you got a superstar and then you got the kid that's not the superstar, right? Okay. Sorry, it happens. And it's okay. But that kid that's not the superstar feels like crap. They feel like everybody loves the superstar. And you have to let that other kid know, look, there's a lot to you that the quote unquote superstar doesn't really have, and you're a superstar too. You gotta, you're my kind of superstar. 1-877 Doc Dolly, don't go away. Dr. Dahlia here. Are you tired, burned out, gaining weight, succumbing to the daily pressures of life? Well, how's your dopamine doing? How you feel right now, how you'll feel an hour from now, and how you'll feel next week is completely reliant on your dopamine. Our daily motivation and willingness to push through challenges depends on the intricate chemical process dopamine provides. Christian Kalikas and I created Deploying Dopamine, a book that tells you what dopamine is, when it dysfunctions, and how to successfully deploy it when needed. Find Deploying Dopamine on Amazon today. Check it out.
Lisa Wolf here to tell you about our newest website for old-time radio lovers. It's 100radioshows.com. At this site, there are 5 old-time radio shows waiting for you to download free as our gift to you. And be sure to browse the additional 700 old-time radio shows available to you for 70% off by using the promo code RADIO at checkout. This is a limited-time offer, so log on to 100radioshows.com. That's 100radioshows.com.
All right. We are back on the Dr. Dolly Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877 Doc Dolly, 1-877 DOCDALI. So I had a mild problem that I was able to overcome. It took years to overcome this. And the issue I had was going out in public without makeup and without my hair being done. And you would think, being a doctor, and many of you see pictures of me when I was in training. I didn't really have makeup and stuff done because when you're doing 36-hour shifts, you have no time to reapply it. But I still felt that that was something you had to do. Maybe it's because of, my mom wasn't big on makeup or hair, but, I had an aunt who was a model. My grandmother was beautiful. I just felt like I'm going to run into somebody. I have to be presentable. I always wear a bra. I will never go outside without wearing a bra. Things like that. And it wasn't until recently, maybe it's because of me walking the dogs or whatever, where I'm like, you know what? I'm okay with that. If people don't see me without my makeup or my hair. Now, of course, one of the first days I do that, I run into Donny Osmond. And I'm like, are you kidding me? I'm like, hi. He's like, good to see you. What's going on? I was like, I don't have my hair and makeup because that's okay. And I'm like, oh, man. And then, of course, I live near a bunch of Golden Knights. They're just gorgeous, and I'm running into them without makeup. So I might have to kind of go back and start doing that because I really don't like people seeing me, as, how I really look. Because it's amazing what hair and makeup does. And it's I don't like fake. I don't want to think that I look a certain way because I have to fake. God gave me what God gave me and this is who I am. But I got to tell you, I've seen video after video of people who just look, plain as day, and then they look like supermodels by the time they get the right hair and makeup done on them. It blows my mind, But I got to tell you, the element of freedom I feel now, where I'm like, you know what? I don't care anymore. I don't care what people think. This is how I look. Beauty comes from the inside. Who cares? And the next step I have to take is understanding my age. This is going to be a tough one, where in my mind, I think I'm in my 20s and I'm not, and I'm a middle-aged woman. And once my kids, God willing, have grandkids, I'm going to be a grandma. And I'm going to have to realize that people are looking at me like that. So I was seeing a patient And one of the patients was, gosh, I think 27 years old. And he goes, if I was your son, what would you recommend? And I'm like, first of all, you're 27. I'm not. I was like, really? I'm old enough to be this guy's mother? And what's even worse about that is he recognizes that. So I told my husband, I go, do I look old enough to be a 27-year-old's mother? He's like, well, you don't look 27. And I was like, I can't believe I tell you, I live in La La Land. I really do. And so once I was like, yeah, I'm middle-aged, I'm this and this. It really does help you relax a little bit. There was an X-Men movie, and I got to remember which one this is. It had Michael Fassbender in it, so that's all I care about. But the girl that played Mystique wanted him and was in his bed. I don't blame her, all right? And she was not in the blue costume. She looked like, God, she's a Hunger Games girl, Jennifer or something, whatever. And so she looked like, who she was, whatever. But apparently in X-Men, it took a lot of effort for her to be, a looking human as opposed to her mutant form. And Michael Fassbender character, who played Magneto, said, no, I'm sorry, not interested. So she's like, well, I could be whoever you want. And so she changed the way she looked multiple different times. And he's like, this is what I like. You being blue. And you can hear guys in the audience go, yeah, yeah. And I'm like, you know what? Everybody leave Michael Fassbender alone. He's mine. But his explanation was, when you are sitting there putting so much effort into looking a certain way, you're at half strength. And you need to be at full strength. So don't lose part of your energy trying to look and be something you're not, which was really common sense. But that movie line hit so much, and I'm sorry to be paraphrasing it so poorly, because that's kind of what I extend to patients. I extend that to my kids. I extend that to everything. If you are spending so much energy on something that you really don't need to do, it's taken away from the energy you need to provide. So like one reason why I never wore skirts and heels as a doctor in the office. I know now everybody has to wear professional dress and all that. But I was like, if I have to sit here and worry about my skirt and keeping my knees closed when I'm, talking to patients, and then the heels, and I'm not at full strength. I need to be at full capacity. And the heels are hindering me. The skirt is hindering me. I need to be able to do what I need to do. That's why I wore scrubs. I wore scrubs all the time. And it's interesting, they've changed it where they don't like doctors wearing scrubs. They want them in professional attire. But I love, like the pit and ER and things like that, because look, I dressing up in clothes and worried I'm going to get the clothes stained and all that, you're hindered. And so, I'm seeing that with just in general with life. You're trying to keep an appearance. There was a doctor I trained with who filed for bankruptcy 1 year out of medical school because as soon as he got his first paycheck, he decided to buy a fancy car, fancy house, because he felt he needed to have that appearance up. If you're so worried about your appearance, now you just lost revenue. Now you have to file for bankruptcy. Maybe back up on the appearances. And I get it. If somebody saw, I had a Chevy Chevette with no air conditioning. If somebody saw a doctor drive that, they were like, well, something's wrong with that doctor. They must have gotten sued a lot because they can't afford a car with unbroken windows and air conditioning. So, yeah, I have a fairly decent car. I bought it used. But, just, if you're doing things and you're thinking that it's all about appearance or it's taking work to keep that up, what happens if you let it fall? What happens if you, just rebuild it? We only have X amount of energy and X amount of strength. Interestingly, one of my friends, doctor friends, got a knee replacement, and he was told he was too young. You're too young. But finally, he's like, but I can't function with it. I'm not skiing anymore. I'm not hiking anymore. So the orthopedist said, you want to know what? I want you to function.
And the reason why we say you're too young is because you may outlive the knee, and then you have to have a whole nother surgery in your 70s or 80s. And he said, you know what, I'll take that risk because I'm not living now. And so they do the knee replacement, and he's like, I'm like a new man. I could hike again. I could ski again. I could do things. And so sometimes we put so much effort into trying to make something work or trying not to change it that it's making us less effective. You know, I think also God gives us gifts. Like one thing I really can't stand is when I go to a humid environment, my hair is like really frizzy. I do not like the way I look, and I don't like the way my hair looks. I think I look awful in a humid environment. But you want to know what? I'm more free. Right? I'm not damaging my hair. My hair is healthier. Sometimes just stop. Look at what your natural, the gray. Every one of my guy friends who has started to embrace the gray looks good. It's not bad. Why are you dyeing your beard? Why are you dyeing your hair? Why are you trying to hide it? There's even a pretty gray women could do. So if I do start to go gray, I haven't yet, but I mean, I'll probably blonde it, but I might do like a blonde gray or something like that, where I'm embracing it. But, you know, I'm not here to give you guys beauty tips, but if it looks like you're putting a lot of work into something and you're half staff, you know, see what you can do about making yourself whole again. 1-877-DOC-DOLLY.
Carl Amari here to tell you about our newest website for old-time radio lovers. It's 100radioshows.com. At this site, there are 5 old-time radio shows waiting for you to download free as our gift to you, and be sure to browse the additional 700 old-time radio shows available to you for 70% off by using the promo code RADIO at checkout. This is a limited-time offer, so log on to 100radioshows.com. That's 100radioshows.com.
Have you ever thought you'd like to buy and sell houses but didn't know how or where to get the money? My name is Ron LeGrand, and over the past 40 years, I've bought over 3,000 houses without using my money or credit and taught thousands to do the same. Today, even in a virtual environment, we buy nice houses in nice neighborhoods using no banks, realtors, contractors, or other costly entanglements, and build huge cash flow and wealth without the hassle of tenants, all without credit and little or no money. You don't need a license or experience, and I'll show you exactly how it's done. Text FREE to 99799, and I'll send you my free training. I promise you I'll change the way you think about real estate and open the door to a new lifestyle that doesn't involve risk or rehabs and can quickly replace your current income. Text FREE to 99799, and let me show you how to take your life back and build cash flow and wealth from your home. That's FREE to 99799. Again, FREE to 99799.
Hi guys, Dr. Dahlia here. Addictions can sneak up on us and come in many forms, whether it's drugs, alcohol, sex, video games, porn, or something less obvious such as food, internet, or shopping. Addiction can seem innocent at first and then evolve into an insurmountable evil. In our book, Addiction Basics, Caitlin Kalikas and I dive into the common addictions and provide tips for identifying and preventing these before they sneak in and take over our lives. Addiction Basics can be found on Amazon or my website, drdahlia.com. Check it out. We are back on the Dr. Dahlia Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877-DOC-DOLLY, 1-877-DOC-DALI. So years ago when I was a kid, we were walking through one of these restaurants. I don't think it was Red Lobster, but it was a restaurant. And you saw like the live lobster. And but we didn't order lobster. We couldn't afford it, and we don't really eat lobster in my family. But I remember somebody told me, and I was a kid at the time, that when they cook lobster, they throw the lobster alive. Well, I think because I made a comment as a kid going, they're alive. So that means they have to kill the lobster to eat it. Yeah, I mean, I knew they had to kill our chicken or the calf or the cow to get our food. But, I didn't think that in a restaurant you would see the live animal prior, because you saw like the food server somebody would choose the lobster they wanted to eat. And then the waiter would grab it. And you're like, so now that lobster is going to die. How did they kill the lobster? So I think it might have been the question I had posed. And somebody had responded, I forget who, that, well, they throw it in the boiling pot. I go, alive? And they go, yeah, and you could hear the screaming. The lobster will scream. Okay, so I was terrified by that. And now, no, the lobster doesn't scream, because it doesn't have vocal cords, but the lobster feels it. And so at first I thought they were lying. And then as I grew older, I was like, okay, they really do throw live animals, live crustaceans, cephalopods, octopi in boiling water. I go, well, they could feel that. I mean, a high school biology could teach you that. And I'm like, they're not going to kill them first? No, that's the way they've always done it. They can't feel it. Yes, they can feel it. In fact, the lobster could be alive for up to 3 minutes in that boiling water before it dies. Now I feel bad. I like lobsters. I like fishies. I like octopus. Although octopi, they could be really rough sons of guns. You got to be really, really careful of an octopus, because it'll crawl out of its aquarium and go to others and eat the fish and crawl back. It doesn't care about going out into the land and part of the world and do what it has to do. They're pretty wily. But when you throw a live seafood into boiling water, they could survive for a long time. So what is the lobster screaming? Lobsters don't have vocal cords. It's supposed to be the steam escaping the shell, and also some of the air, I guess, that's created by the boiling organs. It's not pretty barbaric. And I guess now restaurants in England are being banned from killing lobster and cooking them and other animals, not only crustaceans but cephalopods, and that way. Why did they do that? Why of all the animals did they decide that we're going to just take boiling water and just throw the fish in it or the seafood in it? Well, because apparently, as we've talked about before, many forms of seafood can be poisonous. And so rather than letting it die first and then storing it in the bacteria, they felt that the freshest way to make fresh is to, cook it while it's alive. I think it's barbaric. I think there are better ways to do it. And I guess now in England, there's going to be a change in the UK government now recognizes certain invertebrates as sentient beings. And so in November 2021, lobsters, octopi, and crabs were formally included under the Animal Welfare Sentence Framework, requiring policymakers to consider their welfare in future decisions. Many England ministers, they call them, public officials, have made clear that live boiling is not considered an acceptable killing method, and that guidance will be updated. So I looked up, how do you kill a lobster painlessly? Now, interestingly, the laws of kashrut, because people will ask me, Dr. Dahlia, what is kosher meat? Well, it's more expensive, but why? Well, a rabbi blesses it, but also because they kill the animal as painlessly as possible. Well, how do they do that? So for kosher meat, the cow, rather than sitting there and then being slaughtered, they bring the cow up and let the blood rush. They invert the cow upside down, let the blood rush to his head, and then they cut the jugular. And apparently they found that to be one of the more painless ways to kill cattle. And so there's rules in kashrut and for kosher food that the animal had to have been with the utmost respect and with such responsibility and empathy and appreciation for trying to do it without hurting them, that those processes need to be followed in terms of kosher meat. So, with they're I think they're still going to feel to some degree, but a cutting of the jugular and you being inverted in it's a more painless way for an animal to die. So for lobster, I don't know if I agree with this. They suggest to chill and stun it. According to Google AI, studies have shown, which I disagree with, to place the lobster in the freezer for about 20 minutes to an hour, or an ice saltwater slurry to induce a state of torpor, which numbs the animal and slows its metabolism. So rather than boiling an animal for a few minutes, they want you to freeze it for an hour and it's still alive. I don't know. I mean, I'm no animal rights expert, but that, or biologist, but that does not sound the most painless. The other way they say is you stun the lobster. You can, no, that's after you chill it. Then it's stunned. You mark an X on the top of the head behind the eyes, and then you position a sharp chef's knife at this spot, dive it firmly. Yeah, I don't know if I would freeze a lobster. Why can't you just very quickly hit it in the head? They say the most effective way is ikijime. Am I pronouncing that right? Or spiking. You hold the fish firmly, locate the brain, usually just behind above the eyes, swiftly insert a sharp spike or awl directly into the brain. If done correctly, the fish will convulse briefly and instantly go limp. You could do percussive stunning using a blunt instrument to deliver a single forceful blow to the head just above the eyes, but then there could be bleeding. You need to ensure the fish has died. There's also things that they say you could do where you could put them in water and put an anesthetist. You could put a medication, an anesthesia in the water where then the fish gets drugged and then, yeah. But they don't want your fish to suffocate in air. So like when you go fishing, it's interesting. When we go fishing, I don't like to see the fish flop around in the air and suffer. I like to immediately, address it so it's painless. And I don't fish anything I won't eat. If not, I'll throw it back. And still, I don't like to have hook damage and other things in the fish. So I'll only fish for something that I know I'm going to eat, like salmon or halibut or something like that. I have to admit, barracuda fishing was fun. But if I'm not going to eat barracuda, then I probably are not going to fish for that again. And I respect animals. I love animals, and they do feel pain. I have to advise parents or patients who have pets to always be aware of their pets being in pain. Their pet is not going to go owie. They're going to be quiet. They're going to become less extroverted. They're going to introvert. They're going to start to kind of hide. That's a sign of pain. For any of you guys that have ever had a lab, we had a yellow lab, and the yellow lab always seemed happy with tail wagging and all that. But Apollo had hip dysplasia, and we really think that the hips were hurting him. And the vet said, yeah, he's in pain. You got to treat the pain. 1-877 Doc Dolly, don't go away.
Looking for an easy read that can actually help secure someone's future? Pick up a copy of Mark Falter's book, Common Sense Income Strategies. For the past 30-plus years, Mark has helped thousands of hardworking Americans secure their financial future by using strategies that continue to create wealth, whether the market is up or down. Strategies that will make perfect sense once you take the time to read this powerful book. Common Sense Income Strategies brings to you what Mark has been teaching in person and talking about on the radio for decades. It's not rocket science, it's a pretty easy read. You've worked too long and too hard not to see the fruits of your labor. Common Sense Income Strategies is available now on Amazon or by calling 866-764-2635. That's 866-764-2635. Common Sense Income Strategies by financial fitness show host Mark Falter. Secure your financial future today.